Are you there?
We're here.
Hello. Welcome. Wow, they wanted to give me a heart attack by not saying anything, and now I'm thinking that their audio wasn't on. But hey, we are doing it. So we've got Jess and Freddie. Both of you, actually, speaking of TechArtista, you are both in a TechArtista office right now, aren't you?
Yes. Yep. We are members at the studio offices in the Grove.
Yeah, that's and there's also offices in the Central West End. But no, we're really excited that they were so interested in having this on and getting information out to folks in St. Louis. And this video will be recorded too, so you'll also be able to share it later for folks who can't sign on right now. Try to hit different parts of the day so we can see if we can reach as many folks as possible. But this is great. So if you all could, probably be great if you all could introduce yourselves for all the new folks who are watching today. And then we can get into talking about absentee voting and what's on the ballot.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Jess. I run a consulting firm and I have offices here in the Grove area. I mostly focus on nonprofit as well as political consulting. Freddie and I ran multiple candidate campaigns together, and so we're familiar with a lot of these processes. And given a lot of the changes that have happened with this election cycle, we wanted to be sure that folks understood their options and their access to getting their ballots submitted to vote in November.
I'm Freddie. I'm a TechArtista member. Also, my office is here in the studios in the Grove. I do mostly public relations consulting, advocacy consulting, and political consulting.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to have you. We also all worked together quite a bit. So they were running my campaign basically before when we were all involved and all together all the time, which is why we're all basically in the same bubble anyway. So I think it's probably best. I mean, the fastest, the most upcoming deadline, the one that's like right in our faces right now, is the one to register to vote. That's on October 7th. So could you all talk, I guess, a little bit about, voter registration, that whole process? And I mean, it's not a hard process to get involved in, but it's a very important one because you can't vote unless you're registered in Missouri.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah. So we wanted to put this together today, and shout out to Chris Holt and all the folks at TechArtista to put this informational session together so we could ensure that folks were registered before the deadline, which is Wednesday. So you can register to vote, as well as we'd encourage folks to check your registration, even if you voted as recently as August, just because you never know. You don't want any hiccups, especially if you've moved or had any changes in terms like your name, gotten married, anything like that. So the deadline to register is Wednesday. The quickest and probably easiest way to make that happen is to get online. The Secretary of State's office has an opportunity to do that. You can click it takes only a few minutes. You enter some information and you can get your registration done there. You can also register through the Board of Elections. The League of Women Voters is hosting a variety of events over the course of a couple of weekends. Obviously now we've only got this weekend left before Wednesday, but you're welcome to submit a card there. Other avenues, Freddie, that I'm forgetting.
Most city halls, post offices, or public libraries. I know St. Louis County Public Library, you can come right in and they can get you signed up. The great thing about going to do it in person is they will be in charge of making sure your registration gets to where it needs to go, and those registration cards need to be postmarked by the 7th. So even if you do it on the very last day, as long as you get it in the mail by the 7th, you're good. And you should receive a confirmation of your registration within 7 business days of registering.
Yep. And you are able to do it online. And since we've got folks here, we might as well share how to do that, because it is, I mean, look, tech is in the name for TechArtista, so we might as well get a little techie with it. So if you're on a browser, you're looking wherever you are online. I've plugged this website a lot, mostly because I helped build it. But it's called votemissouri.org. And at the very top, look, it's got the deadline. We've had a deadline there for a while. There are no excuses at this point, folks. So you can click the register to vote button right there, or check your registration. Both of those buttons will take you to the Secretary of State's website, because you can check your registration there online. So if you think you're registered, even if you're certain that you are registered, click that button to check it. When you do type in an address or anything else into the Secretary of State's website, some people are like, well, wait, I can't find myself on here. And it's because if you copy and paste an address, sometimes it will have an extra space or something else. So you have to be very careful about what you're typing into that website. You have to follow the directions very closely, which isn't the best thing in the world, but make sure to check your registration. And when you click the register to vote button here, it will take you to an online system that allows you to register right there. And if you have a touch screen, like a tablet or even your phone, you can actually put your signature right there and send it over to them. So you can also do this by paper if you prefer to do that as well, just like Freddie was mentioning. But that resource is right there. And again, that website is at votemissouri.org. So registering is very important. We do not have same-day registration in Missouri. And I know some people would appreciate having that, but unfortunately we don't. So that deadline is a hard deadline, and if you are not registered in that time, you won't be able to vote. So please do that. And the deadline is when?
Wednesday, October 7th.
Great. Okay, so please do that. Please do that, folks.
I recommend once you are registered, going to vote.org or headcount.org to sign up for voting reminders so that you never miss an election.
Yeah.
It's simple. They'll text you within a timely manner, 24, 48 hours before. You can ask questions about your polling location and also get reminders if anything's changed.
It's the most helpful tool I've found because Jess and I are pretty busy. It's always nice to get a little reminder. Hey, check your registration, find your polling place, even find where you can get a sample ballot.
What is that called? I've never heard of that.
Vote.org.
Vote.org. Okay.
And then headcount.org.
All right. You guys want to take a look real quick? I've never heard of Headcount.
Sure. It's an easy, user-friendly website.
Vote.org, huh? Oh, that's great. Okay, so you can do a whole lot of stuff right on here too.
Yep.
And the great thing about vote.org is if you have a website where a lot of TechArtista members have businesses, you can encourage people to visit this website. They will provide you with a code that you can copy and paste onto your website so that folks can check their registration or register to vote if they need to.
Yep.
That's great. And what was the other one? The other one was called Headcount? Is that also a .org?
Yep.
The future is voting. Oh. And so this is another registration website too?
Yep. The great thing about these websites is you can sign up for voting reminders. So you'll get your email or your phone number and they'll text you reminders about upcoming elections. And it's so intuitive that you'll even get reminders for municipal elections.
Oh, wow. That's great. Okay, good. Yeah, the reminders are important because, everybody gets busy. Put it in your calendar if you don't have this, but, you could just get this too. Okay, that's great resources. Okay, cool. Well, so that's the registering part. Now that folks are registered, they can vote. So there are a couple different ways that folks can vote. You can vote in person, and that date is November 3rd. So you can put that on your calendar right now if you're not signing up for one of these reminders. But there's also ways for folks to vote before the November 3rd election day. And in Missouri, there are two. That's absentee voting and mail-in voting. Do you all want to talk about the differences between those, how to get signed up for that?
Yeah, we can talk a little bit. So I think, and in theory, there's actually a fourth. Absentee can be what you traditionally hear about, where you're filling out a form and requesting your absentee ballot. That deadline is October 21st. But actually starting September 22nd last week, folks are able to walk into the Board of Elections. So if you live in the county, you need to go to the St. Louis County Board of Election, or if you live in the city, you need to go to the St. Louis City Board of Election off of Tucker. You can actually walk in. It's one of the safest options for folks right now, given the current circumstances of the world. So it started on September 22nd up through pretty much the day before the election. You can go to the Board of Election. You need to bring some form of identification with you, with proof of address, and you will just select a reason for why you're voting absentee in person. So it's pretty much identical to what you would see on the form when you're requesting your absentee ballot and completing that. You're just more having a conversation with an election official. And you do not need a notary for this process. So that's something if folks want to go, on Monday to the Board of Election. I know the city, it's anywhere from 8 to 5. So that's an opportunity that you have over the next few weeks. If you get a break or, a meeting gets canceled, you can pop over there and do that. So that is absentee, which is in-person absentee. And then what you traditionally hear about, I'm going to vote absentee. St. Louis, the state of Missouri made some changes. If you're over 65 years old, you automatically qualify for this. So you will receive your ballot in the mail. You can vote absentee. If you want to request this option for you, if you don't meet some of those automatic eligibility requirements, you can request that. That form is also, you can find that on Vote Missouri or the Secretary of State's website. You complete the form. It needs to be postmarked and submitted by 5 o'clock on October 21st. Or you can actually physically take it again to the Board of Election. If you're really going to go ahead and take that form to the Board of Election, you may as well just vote in person when you're there if you're taking the time. And we'll talk a little bit about the options. So on that form, you'll be selecting why you're voting absentee. So maybe you're going to be a poll worker, you're working for a candidate that day. Your risk of illness, confinement, some of the pieces in relation to the pandemic, all of that will be listed on that form. And there are notary requirements. So I'll actually turn that over to Freddie to explain which options need a notary and which ones don't.
So yes, if you are requesting an absentee ballot, you will select options 2 or 7. Those are the options that don't require a notary. If 2, I believe, is if you are confined because of illness or disability, and number 7 is because you're over the age of 65 or have an illness which makes you susceptible to contracting COVID-19. One of the things that folks can remember is in St. Louis County, the hours are the same as St. Louis City for absentee in-person voting, 8 to 5. The St. Louis County Board of Elections is located at the Old Northwest Plaza, if anybody remembers that. Starting October 22nd, you can vote absentee in person at satellite locations in St. Louis County. So if you go to their website, currently it lists the areas where they're going to be having those satellite in-person absentee voting locations. For all the other excuses on your absentee ballot requests, like if you're requesting a mail-in ballot, that requires a notary, or if you'll be outside, or if you expect to be outside of your jurisdiction, your voting jurisdiction on election day. The only options on your absentee ballot requests that do not require a notary are options 2 and 7. And on the mail-in ballot option, the requests must be received by mail, and your ballot has to be received by mail. So this is a process whereby nothing happens in person. Your ballot must be notarized, and it must be received at the Board of Elections by mail. If you happen to get a mail-in ballot, and let's say election day is coming up, you don't think you'll make it in time, you'll be able to mail it in time, you can show up to your polling place, bring your ballot so that you can surrender it to your election official, and then they will give you a different ballot to vote on election day. So you have to bring your ballot with you and a form of identification so that your ballot can be surrendered. One last thing is if you request an absentee ballot that's any of the other reasons, they can be dropped off at your Board of Elections by a relative of the second degree. So like I can drop off my parents' or grandparents' ballots or my spouse's ballot. So if you don't have time to drop it off and it's getting close to election day, you may want to have someone drop it off for you if you can't do it yourself, but make sure it's a relative to the second degree. And there was one other thing that I wanted to tell you. If you are mailing in your ballots, try to get those dropped in the mail by October 26th to make sure that there's enough time to allow it to get back to your Board of Elections prior to Election Day.
Yep.
I know that was a lot of information.
It's a lot. Look, I mean, we've got the mail-in, you've got the absentee. There's differences between you can vote. It's It's unfortunate that there's like all of these different terms and everything, and now you need like a flow chart to figure out which one to use. It's fine, okay? You can figure out how to vote. You can get it done. If you can't go in person on election day, that's fine. And what's really wonderful is that all the local election authorities so far that I've interacted with have been very, very good. They're working very hard to make sure everybody can vote. They're working very hard to count a record number of absentee ballots that are already going out and coming back in. I mean, you should see some of the photos of how many that St. Louis County on their own has sent out. I think they're well over 100,000 ballots that they've sent out so far in absentee voting. But if you can, vote absentee. That means you need to have one of those excuses. That's the easiest thing to do. You can go in person, vote absentee. That's fine. If you can't do that, you can vote by mail, but voting in person is fine too. People are taking precautions if you are worried about that. Voting absentee in person is also an option. One thing I do want to clarify, there was a comment here, actually a couple from Twitch. So we've got Cateris. Hopefully I'm pronouncing, maybe Cateris, but I'm sure it's a Latin derivative, your username, just like mine is, Bigalot. You've received so sometimes you might get some inaccurate information if you're going through some of the third-party sort. If you see that happening and you feel more comfortable with the Secretary of State's website, that's fine. Go ahead and use that if you are seeing some issues there. But just like you said, the most definitive source is going to be your local election authority for all of those kinds of issues. For those who are interested, maybe you haven't checked out the website yet, but on the aladgross.live website, we've had a few videos so far with local election authorities, Greene County, Boone County, and also St. Louis County, where we answered a whole bunch of these questions and how they're able to check your signature, all of these things, the security that they're using, and it's really impressive stuff. So we've got those videos out there for you to check out. The second one, yes, Latin. See, I took Latin. I knew about it. But the second comment about proof of residency, you can use that when you're going to vote absentee, but I'm actually going to show you some of the forms of ID that you can use. Let's see if we can pull this thing up. So this is from the Secretary of State again, and there's a page there about acceptable identification that you can use. And so you might get those cards that come in the mail reminding you about here's your time to vote, here's your polling place. You can use those. You can use your photo ID, a passport, just like you did. Even the school ID. I mean, these are all like the forms of IDs that they do have. And even in the situation where you are registered, but maybe you don't have one of those, there are still ways for you to do it. So if you're registered, you'll be able to vote, and you'll just have to talk to the folks who are there. If you are voting absentee in person, you'll actually get the benefit of having the clerks right there speaking with you about the process. So if you bring in the wrong thing, or they're like, well, you're going to have to fill out a provisional ballot, then come back and show me some kind of form of an acceptable ID, you'll know that right there with plenty of time before your ballot has to be counted. So that's another benefit of doing the absentee in person or just reaching out to your local election authority. And another benefit of go back to Vote Missouri is that on this website, there's all this information about how to vote, what the process is, what the deadline is. But we also, on step 2 of this website, you'll be able to find your local election authority, all the contact information from them, emails, phone numbers, fax numbers, addresses. So it also helps you get in contact with them too. But yeah, although it sounds like it's, a whole process to figure out which ballot you've got to use, you can do it. The reason that we're putting all this information out there is to help you make it easier for you. So if you feel overwhelmed, ignore what we're saying, go vote, figure it out, by mail, absentee, whatever you need to do, vote the way that works for you. I will be posting this soon too. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, if you're a TechArtista member and you need to have your absentee ballot notarized, come find me in Suite 202 at TechArtista Studios in the Grove so that you can get your ballot notarized and we can get it in the mail for you.
Yes. And this is great because Freddie was on a show with just a little bit ago talking about finding a notary. And again, on the votemissouri.org website, there's a button right there for you to find a notary. It will take you to 2 links, one of which is to the Secretary of State's website, which has a whole bunch of folks there who can do the notary process for you wherever you live. And then motoryconnections.org. We brought Jonah Zacks, who's a wonderful kid, volunteering and doing all of this work and getting folks organized, where you can get connected with a notary in your area as well. And Freddie is one of the volunteers on that website. So, yeah. So good places to go. I am going to show you Ashley Kuykendall, who's a friend of mine, a friend of all of ours, put up a like kind of a sheet to help you figure out like, oh, well, how am I going to vote this year? And yes, it is a flow chart. Yes, there are a lot of places, but it's very colorful and it helps you through the process. So I will be posting this up as well too. But this takes you through everything. So any question that you have about how can I get from in my brain, I would like to support somebody for this office or some issue, like we'll talk about very soon, that I would like passed in Missouri or not passed in Missouri, depending on your perspective, this will get you there. So all you have to do is follow the wonderful color coding that's done here. I'm a big fan of color coding. And it will get you to having your vote counted in Missouri. So I will post this as well, but Ashley's done really great work on this with her team as well. So we'll get that information to you too. Okay. Checking to see, making sure there aren't any more questions about that. Did I miss anything on the absentee stuff? Because I think we can maybe get into the meat of what's going to be on the ballot now.
Yeah, I think it's all you on jumping in on all of the fun and interesting things that we will be voting on.
Oh, great. Okay.
To mention, if you are registering to vote, you must submit a copy of your photo ID with your registration if you're doing it yourself, or if you go to somewhere where you need, where you're getting registered. If they are not deputized by your local election authority, you must send a copy of your ID in with your registration.
That's exactly right. Yeah, if you're registering, I think it's for the first time, right? Not if you're changing addresses. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you are registering for the first time in Missouri, welcome. Congratulations. You did it. And that includes, the youngins out there who are getting registered. That's good. So please do. But, yeah, you will have to jump through a little bit more. You'll have to send, your ID over to them if you're doing it online. If you can also do it in person at your local election authority. So, and then once you're registered, you can just vote an absentee. Just saying, you could do all that right there. So, all right. And as you have questions, ask them. We'll get you answers. So, all right. So now we got to talk about what's on the ballot. So let's do. There's one that's a little less controversial, and then there's one that's a little more controversial in terms of the things that people ask me the most about. I don't know if this is true for you all too, but I get asked a lot about, what is my take on the different ballot initiatives, so amendments and propositions. And then the other thing I get asked a lot about is less so candidates, like, for governor, or for president, or for Congress, but more so judges. Because, how am I supposed to know which judge is good? I don't practice, but you're a lawyer. You could tell me. So actually, a bunch of lawyers got together and they made a website. So let me show you what that one looks like. And it's the one I use too. So I'm a lawyer and I practice in front of judges. But this is the one that I try to use the most because there's been a lot of time spent on this thing. It's called yourmissouriJudges.org. And right here, it's actually a whole rating system that is done by a combination of attorneys and also even like jury members and other folks who have been in front of judges too. This is one of those years, and it doesn't happen all too often, but it's one of those years where every judge that's on the ballot has been rated to be retained by the Missouri Bar. But if you really like to take so that's the easy one. The easy one is they suggest everybody be retained. If you've had an experience with the judge in particular and you want to share and you want to organize folks around that, positive or negative, whatever it might be, it's an opportunity for you to do that. But right now, that's what their recommendations are. This actually allows you, so, there's the reviews up here at the top. This allows you to go, learn more about how the process works, who's on the committee. The state of Missouri is separated into different circuits. So, you won't see all of them on here. And that's because for the judges that you do see, like in St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Jackson County, these are the ones that are appointed under Missouri's nonpartisan plan, which is called the Missouri Plan. It's not true throughout the state. There are some places where you're going to be voting on a judge who is running as a Democrat, running as a Republican, running as something else. And so those folks are not included on this website. Those folks are like running, under a party, which is it's a little strange. And I've got some friends who are doing that right now in Missouri. It's a little bit odd to be doing that under a party. I think that's probably true for a lot of positions we have in Missouri. But here, let's take St. Louis City, for example. You'll click here and you will see not only the judges for that local area, but you'll also see all the judges, like all the way up to the Supreme Court of Missouri, which you will have a voice in. So everybody in Missouri is going to be voting on a judge because the Supreme Court applies all throughout the state. Even those circuits where the local judges are elected as Democrats or Republicans, the appellate court, which is the court right above them, and then the Supreme Court, which is the highest court in the state, those are both appointed through the nonpartisan plan. So you will be voting on appellate court judges, either the Supreme Court or, you might have the Western District or the Eastern District of Missouri as well. And so you'll see those folks here. So Patricia Breckinridge is a justice on the Supreme Court. And when you click on these folks, you'll get some background on them, their evaluation year, the position, just like we met before. The review is right there, so meets overall judicial performance standards, and personally, I agree. But then you also get to see these opinions here. So there's a lawyer survey results, and you can click on that. Will expand out the different opinions that they have here. Past evaluations for those who have been judges for a while. In Missouri, we do have a mandatory retirement age for judges. So you can be a judge for a while, but eventually when you hit 70, you're done. You can't be a judge anymore. So no matter how good of a judge you might be at the time, and no matter how many people might want to vote, you're done. So you'll have to go find something else to do. But that's not the case for these judges here that you will get to vote on. But this is the best resource that I know of for this. If you go, for example, to other third-party folks like the League of Women Voters, which is a big one in Missouri, they will point you back to this website. So I highly recommend this website. Even for folks who maybe, they've met the recommendations. If there is some issue there, you'll oftentimes see it in the expanded results over here. So if you like researching, this is a great opportunity. Go read about your judges. So that's my spiel on judges. You all think I miss anything on that one? No? Looking okay?
And everyone's got different ideas on retaining or not retaining, so it's up to you. We're just here to provide you with resources to kind of figure out what's better for you.
And I think some people may be interested in what the judicial performance standards are, because I have questions as I recommend this website to folks like, well, what are the judicial performance standards? What does that mean?
Right. Yes, absolutely. So you can take, for example, you click on the survey results here, right? Let's expand one out. So this is going to give you all of these, questions about like legal ability, impartiality, how they communicate, how they're interacting with folks in their courtroom. And that includes lawyers, but it also includes, like I said, jurors, and also people like defendants, plaintiffs, other folks who are in that courtroom. And so, they're pretty extensive. Yeah. Temperament and demeanor. Look, even that is included in here. So, at the end, all of these surveys go out to folks who are in front of those judges. And it's going to be different, for an appellate court judge. They don't have juries. So, they're going to have different folks who are interacting with them. Mostly the people that they are seeing are attorneys. So a lot of those reviews, as you go higher up in the appellate chain, mostly it's going to be skewed towards attorneys. But for trial court folks, and let's see if we can pull one up here. But here we go, like Tim Boyer. So for like Judge Boyer here, you'll see this juror survey results, right? And so this is what, and this one's making me download. So in some of these, it's going to pop up as a PDF. Some of these will download onto your computer. Yeah, I mean, if you click here, again, you'll see the survey results apply to them as well. And so that's really what these things are based on. The opinions are opinions that they have written. So if you want to see like, oh, what is a judge thinking on some issues, like what's some samples of their writing and things that they've done, this is a really great resource for you to click on and actually see, oh, here's a case that they had and here's what they thought. So, yeah. So at the end, you can make your decision, but, and then again, like in the review section here on the website, it does describe like, oh, what the committee is, what the review process is. So if you do have a question about that, they discuss just about everything here. So good website, take some time with it. Especially if you don't know your judges. If you do know your judges, great. Tell some friends. But if you don't, great website to go to. So yeah, good question.
So for the sake of time, if you want to, if you could chat through the various issues that are going to be on the ballot and just maybe a synopsis of what each of them are going to encompass, and then maybe some things you've heard for both sides, folks that, are supporting a proposition and those that are maybe against it, maybe some of the common things that we're hearing, and some things that maybe folks should think about or consider on these various issues. Because again, we're here to provide you all with information and resources to make your own informed decision. We are by no means wanting to sway anyone one way or another.
Well, I might want to sway you one way or another. I'm just not going to right now. You can find me later. If Freddie ever gets his Freddie After Dark show, we'll talk about that all the time. So I'm plugging you again, Freddie. I will actually point everybody to a website that does this really well now, and that is Vote 411. So you should see that on your screen right now. It's just vote411.org. This comes from the League of Women Voters. It is another website where you can type in your address and you will find a ballot. So you'll actually be able to go through who is on the ballot. You'll actually be able to compare different candidates too. So if you don't know who's running for governor or secretary of state or treasurer, you'll actually get to see all the candidates there. They've got little brief descriptions of who they are and things that they've responded to. It's not super long, so you'll probably want to do some more research on them. But then it gets into the initiatives, so the different things that are on the ballot that we are voting on, like the different amendments and propositions. And in those, they go very much in depth, and they actually describe like, oh, supporters think this and opponents think that. So it's a really good website. You don't have to memorize everything I'm telling you here today, but you can just go right here. You type in your address and information, and we'll pull that up for you. There are going to... Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I do want to reiterate, so the League of Women Voters is nonpartisan. So for those of you who've got all walks of life probably tuning in, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, Libertarian, if there is a candidate that running for a certain position in any of those parties, they will be listed and you will get that information. So the value of the league is that you have members, all three of us are members, but you have members across party lines that are really working together to do some important work and keep folks informed. It's not about pushing or persuasion in terms of one thing or another. And so there's a lot of value. And this Vote 411 is their national page, but you can distill down into the St. Louis chapter or the Missouri information. But just want to put that out there for folks who don't feel like we're pushing you one direction. This is a nonpartisan, accessible source.
Right. Yes, that's absolutely right. Yeah. And there are some things that the League of Women Voters, for example, will endorse. So that does happen sometimes. But actually on this website that we just showed you, the vote411.org, they don't do that. So it's actually interesting how they might, as an organization, endorse something, but on there they won't tell you. Wherever you are in Missouri, you will have two things to vote for. that are amendments. So that will be Amendment 1 and Amendment 3. There's a difference between amendments and propositions. This year it doesn't really matter because there are no propositions that apply statewide. There might be propositions that apply locally for you in the St. Louis area. That is absolutely true. And in other areas, it's very much absolutely true as well. But the amendments are ones that change Missouri's state constitution. So they are harder to change later. It can't just be that the legislature just decides, hey, well, we don't like this amendment that you passed, we're just going to change it. That has happened, and in fact, we do have an example of that on the ballot right now. But the example is there because in order for this big change to be made to an amendment or to the state constitution, has to come before the voters. So we do have an example of that happening this year. Amendment 1 is about term limits. So right now there are term limits for 2 of the statewide offices in Missouri. That is for Missouri's governor and Missouri's treasurer. But it does not exist for Missouri's attorney general, for Missouri's lieutenant governor, and for Missouri's auditor. So that one was proposed by the legislature in Missouri, and it was put onto the ballot for approval of the people. So now we have to vote and decide whether we want to apply 2-term limit to those other positions. So some folks really love term limits. They want to see new people coming in or whatever it might be, but they say, look, at some point you're done, move on to something else, or just go back to private life, whatever it might be. And so some folks really like term limits. The folks who don't like term limits so much are pointing to maybe the specific positions and saying, hey, it would be nice to have somebody in there for longer. And so when you're voting on this one, we already do have that for those 2 positions, governor and treasurer. You'll be determining whether you want to apply those same limits to every other statewide candidate that is not like senator, because that's the other statewide candidate, but that's the federal level. So there are no term limits for United States senators, United States Congress folks. But right now there is for governor, treasurer, and so you'll decide if you want that for attorney general, for lieutenant governor, and for auditor. So that is Amendment 1. Yeah, I mean, some of these are a little bit simpler than others. Right. Amendment 3 is a little less, it's not as simple. Amendment 3 is the example of something coming back to the people after a change was already made. So back in 2018, Missouri passed something called Clean Missouri. And that was, at the time, it was Amendment 1, right, Freddie?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. It was. So that was Amendment 1 on the ballot at the time, and it put in a whole bunch of requirements in terms of what folks have to do with regards to spending. So that dealt with like ethics reforms in terms of reducing how much money a lobbyist gifts to folks who are in the legislature. So reduce that down to like $5. It reduced the amount of top contribution could be to state senators and state House of Representative candidates. And the biggest thing that it changed was this concept around redistricting. So after the census, we redistrict the state. And so the reason that we do that is we want to make sure that folks are represented. Roughly, the same number of people in one area get one representative as in other areas of the state. And so that was part of the idea behind the census, is how do we allocate resources best from, government sources, whatever that might be. So it's very important for you to do the census. Please do the census. Do the census, because we need you to do the census. Otherwise, some places don't get as much assistance as they need. And so For redistricting, we then take all that number. We see, if people have moved around, whatever it might be. We draw the districts a bit differently, and then that way all those folks in there are represented by one person. And, maybe there's 10,000 people here. Well, then roughly you want 10,000 people everywhere to have one person who's representing them. So that's the idea. Yeah. That has not really been fully implemented yet because we haven't done the census. So we really haven't. It is now coming back to us to vote on. So it's a different version of some of these ethics reforms that were already in place and changing that redistricting system. Some people also call it gerrymandering, so you might have heard that term before too. It does reduce the lobbyist gifts. And some, it still leaves some that are open, just like the other one did. But instead of being a $5 limit, now it's a $0 limit. The idea behind the $5 limit, as was described, was, well, if you're talking to somebody who's, lobbying, they can buy you a cup of coffee. Under this proposal, bye-bye cups of coffee. So the coffees are gone. And it does... Yeah, it changes some of the max contribution limits a little bit there too. It just adjusts them a little bit lower. But the big change here again, just like with Clean Missouri, is in the redistricting process. So in Clean Missouri, the redistricting process beforehand went to this commission of Republicans and Democrats, and that a commission would then draw up a map, and they would try to get this map, and they would try to get agreement in the commission. If they couldn't get an agreement, like we didn't get the last couple of times, it would then go to a panel of judges that we're also choosing here, but a panel of appellate judges to then take that basic map that they started with and try to work on it and draw it in some way, and then that's what we have. And so that's kind of how the process has been going. Clean Missouri changed that so that the first step is actually what's called a nonpartisan demographer. So that's a professional map maker. They're the ones who get the first crack at making the map. Then the map goes to the commission with Republicans and Democrats both on it that are appointed by the governor. And if they have the opportunity to then change that map that is made by the professional map maker, if they can't get enough of an agreement to do that, then the map made by the map maker stays. So that's the way it works. Otherwise, these folks can change it. So it takes the judges out of the process. It also changes the process so that now it starts with this nonpartisan map maker before it goes to the committee with Republicans and Democrats on it. So, folks, there have been, some criticisms in Missouri. There's, both sides here. So there's one that says, well, Missouri is very much drawn to favor folks who are already in power and keep them in power. And so, some folks have that criticism. The other end of it is, well, folks who are in power right now just say, well, we're just better at it. So that's why we're in power. We've been winning these elections, and that's why we're here. And so if you really have a problem, go do better and talk to the people and communicate with them. And so that's kind of where we are right now. The legislature made changes. And so the Clean Missouri was voted on by the people, got on the ballot, and then, folks signed, and then it was voted on and was passed. Now it's back in a form where the legislature has put it on the ballot, and it would change it so that instead of having the nonpartisan map maker, it's going to go back to the Democrats and Republicans drawing the map and everything else that we had before. So basically reversing it without us having done it yet. And then it changes how people are counted. And this is probably the biggest change that's being made. Missouri would become the first state, probably in American history that we know of, to not count everyone in the state for redistricting purposes for the state specifically, for the state legislature, for the state House of Representatives and the state Senate. It would count based on the principle, this is what it says, based on the principle of one person, one vote. And it's not very clear what exactly that means, but it sure seems like that means that folks who are not eligible to vote won't be counted. and the largest number of people who would not be counted would be children in Missouri. And so there have been a lot of studies that are showing what the impact has been. So argument for that, I mean, it's a pretty novel thing because it hasn't been done in America before. The history so far has been that people are just supposed to be represented so that everybody has equal access to their representatives, whether they're voting or not. But this would change it. So I suppose it would put more of an emphasis on voting and engagement and on voter eligible folks. It would exclude immigrants who are not eligible to vote as well. And so that's, some folks are in favor of that. Folks who are opposing it do believe that, well, we should stick with the same principle where everybody should have access and equal access to their representatives. It would also have pretty, I mean, there have been some studies to show the decrease in representation by demographic groups. And so among white people in Missouri, and this is primarily because of children, but also because of, different immigrant populations coming into America, even if they're in the process of being naturalized. But the representation in our government would change so that white representation, like those folks, white folks who are in Missouri, 21% of those would no longer be represented in our government under the one person, one vote paradigm. 28% decrease, so that's more, a 28% decrease in black representation, a 54% decrease in Hispanic and in Asian representation, both separately. So it will have different impacts depending on the demographic level. And so, those are the arguments. Some folks support it, some folks don't. And it is something that, like I said, we haven't implemented the full way of doing the nonpartisan map maker yet. So there's not much to compare it to. We can't really say, oh, well, that system didn't work, so here's why we need to change it. But some folks feel very strongly that it won't work, and so that's why they're trying to change it now. And so those are the two things that will be on the ballot, Amendment 1 and Amendment 3. Amendment 1 is the term limits. Amendment 3, which is, I warned you early, it was going to be a little more complicated. Amendment 3 is the reversal of Clean Missouri's redistricting process. And then also adding in some of the limitations on fundraising and on some of the lobbyist gifts too. So those are the ones statewide.
And before you hop into propositions that are more local, Olad, I do want to point out, and I don't know if you or Freddie would like to speak further, just in terms of ballot language. So one thing to just be mindful, do your research, check out resources, talk with folks, folks that you believe in and have faith in and trust their opinion, whether it's an elected official or someone, that you go to for guidance. I think the thing to consider and always be mindful of is ballot language and how things are drafted. And so things can just be written a little sneaky. So make sure you do your research, because some sentences, I know there's been criticisms of the opening line of Amendment 3. And so just being mindful of that as you go to the ballot box.
Mm-hmm. Another thing to be mindful is in some places in Missouri, it shouldn't be an issue now with voting, but and I guess in the St. Louis area, it wasn't one at all. But in some counties, a few, Buchanan County was one, Vernon County was another, but they actually sent the wrong language on there, because that language, so when you see the language on your ballot, it's actually a summary. It's not the full language of what that ballot initiative is, so you have to research more. The term limits one is closer just because the term limits one is shorter, but the Clean Missouri change, Amendment 3, is pretty extensive. So that's one that, will take a little bit of time to read through it. But that's one that you won't see as much of the language on there. But that one went to court. It was changed multiple times before it got to the way it is right now. So, so you'll want to do your research, that's for sure.
My trick, if I haven't done my research, is to read it out loud to yourself. And if it doesn't make sense, you should probably vote no.
Yeah, there's Rules of thumb for everything. Yeah, I mean, do your research beforehand. I know, some folks have been commenting and saying, look, I got my ballot right in front of me right now. Look, this is great. I mean, if you've got it at home, you got plenty of time to do your research. If you're hopping on here, you can share this with other people. But, you can find opinions out there, and, maybe even from some folks here. But you can find it in a lot of places. So I would highly recommend doing your research before voting in general. But yeah, those are the ones. Those are the ones on the state ballot.
Yep. So do you want to hop into the propositions that are? I know there's quite a few on the city ballot. If you just wanted to do name those and then a quick little overview of what those are, just for the sake of time. I know we had said an hour for today. We're about 5 minutes to that hour. I know we can go a little bit over, but I just want to honor everyone's time. And so send those questions into a lot as we're going. But I think if you want to hop on the propositions, that'd be great.
Yeah, and again, I would recommend checking out vote411.org because, that way we're not taking up all your time, but you'll see those over there. The St. Louis City ballot is the one I'm the most familiar with because I am a city voter, and that one does have several different ballot propositions. One of them is about police residency. So in St. Louis, well, it used to be until very recently in St. Louis, in order to be law enforcement officer, you also had to live within the city residences outside of have a city residence outside of some exceptions for that because there had been some that were granted before. But in general, you had to live in the city in order to be a police officer. Recently, that was changed by the state legislature. With a sunset of 3 years. So for the next 3 years, that requirement will no longer be there based on state law. The vote, because you're like, why am I voting that in St. Louis then? The vote in St. Louis will be, well, what happens after those 3 years? And if the state doesn't make any other changes. So you'll be voting on police residency. There's pros and cons. I've had some conversations before, and again, if you're watching on the website, or you can go to the website, we've had some conversations around this too. But some folks say, "Hey, I want them living here because then they understand the situation better. They're closer, whatever it is." The folks who are in opposition say, "Well, we need more officers. We need to train from more backgrounds, and they're not too far away if you limit them within a certain distance, living within a certain distance too." So it's a policy question. There's a lot of research out there on this issue, so you can take a look or watch some of the other videos too that we've done. But that will be on the ballot. There is a ballot proposition. There's one on it's for internet connectivity. And that one it's changing a fee that already exists into a tax in St. Louis. So the fee is involving folks who I believe are providing internet connectivity and those kind of telecommunication services. So one is right now the way it's set is you have to pay a fee in order to get into communities versus do you pay a tax after you've already sold your services to folks. And the request for that switch, my understanding is that people believe it will grant more more people be able to compete because you don't have to have as much money up front. You can get your customer base first and you'll be able to reach more people. And I think the idea behind that was to reduce that technology gap in St. Louis. So that's what that, I really don't know too much about the policies behind it. I think maybe one is if you have folks who are putting up a fee first, you're selecting a certain kinds of companies or whatever it might be, and maybe you're less worried because they have more money up front. I don't know, but you could take a look at that one. But I think the idea there is to try to get more access to more folks and have more competition in the space.
That's my understanding of it too. It allows more opportunities for different internet service providers or telecommunications providers to be able to access customers in the St. Louis market.
Yep. What are the other? There's two more props in the city. Proposition D. So that one is going to, and I'm actually hoping to do a little show on that one too. So keep your eyes out. But that one is going to change the voting mechanism in St. Louis City. So we'll turn St. Louis City elections into nonpartisan ones. And in the primary, you'll, well, I guess not prime, but in the election, the first election, I guess is what it will be called now, you will select those candidates that you approve of. So right now you go to your ballot and you click one person for this position. That's who I'm voting for, right? Now, if you like a second person, too bad. Like that, you pick your favorite, right? And in this situation, you'd be able to pick, well, I actually approve of Joe and Abby and whatever, and you pick all of them. And then the two who get the most votes for that position then go into a runoff, and then you'll only be selecting one. So it's going to change the election system a bit. The proponents of that are really big fans of approval voting. So you might have heard of approval or ranked choice voting. There's different kinds of voting systems out there. You can do a very deep dive on this on YouTube, even if you like watching videos, but there's a whole bunch of stuff out there on it. And their idea is they don't want somebody being elected to a position without 50% or more support. And so this, at the end of the whole process, would, well, maybe guarantee, I guess, if nobody votes and they all vote something else, or I don't know what would happen, but that's the idea. Yeah.
California's jumbo primary system, where you see all the candidates on the ballot and you vote for the ones you like, and then whoever gets they take the top two candidates, and then those are the ones that go into the general.
Right. And it is a bit different than ranked choice voting. Ranked choice voting, you might have seen where you select, this is my first favorite, and then this is my second, and this is my third. They are a bit different. There's like some math that works out a little bit differently in how you do that. And then the benefit, one of the bigger benefits of approval voting is that you can use the same machines right now and the same paper, and so that's part of the cost situation there too. So proponents, that we want people with approval of folks to be elected to positions, and then folks who like nonpartisan elections, they're all about that. Opponents, folks who think that the parties have a role and that they are important, because this would take them out of the city, so you wouldn't have Republicans, Democrats, you just have nonpartisan positions. So some people don't like that. Some people do like the structure that the party does give to these systems. And some people just don't like the concept of you picking more than one horse and, selecting more than one person. So pick your person and stick with that person. And if your person loses, well, go, then too bad. That's just your day. So, so that's got to have to figure out what you want to do with that one. And there's one more prop in the city, and it's about education and early education funding. This one was also put on by the local legislature for the city, the Board of Aldermen. They put this one on the ballot, and it would increase, I think it's the property tax by a little bit. Actually would max, I think it's from a 19-cent assessment to a 25-cent assessment, whatever the maximum allowable is. And it would then fund what should be early childhood education. The proponents, hey, I love kids, and kids need early childhood education opportunities, and having worked with kids, I very much agree with that statement. But opponents are, well, where is the money exactly going to go? Is it going to go to public, private? So where is this money going? And that I think that the idea is it's going to get worked out by whatever committee is taking in that money. But it's what folks are saying now. So that's definitely something you'll want to take a look at to see, especially around the accountability piece, if you feel like it's there and you feel like the process is working. But those are all the props in St. Louis City. And like I said, you can find all of the ones in your local area, wherever they are. And look, really interesting discussions. And in fact, if you paid attention, we spoke a lot more about the issues than we did about a lot of other things, especially the local ones, which just stresses how important it is for you to be involved in knowing what's on your local ballot. And wherever you are, you can do that using that Vote 411 website, which I just think is just such a great resource. So it will literally have your whole ballot there, and you can read about what's on the ballot, and then you can go research even more afterwards. So.
And just before we wrap up here, just some opportunities if you all want to get involved. Obviously, this is a lot of information we've just presented to you. If you are excited about this and want to participate more in depth, there's ways for you to be an election worker. You can work the polls on election day. You can, if you're an attorney, you get what's the official title is an attorney election protection officer for on election day. So there's ways for you to plug in. You can register voters. There's a lot of wards I know in the city and groups and township committees in the county that are actively registering voters. There's going to be a ton of voter registration drives and events over the course of this weekend. And so there's lots of ways for you to get involved. There's a tool called Map the Vote. It's nonpartisan. It's a national tool where you can check your neighborhood and see if there's neighbors around you who maybe have started their registration process and haven't finished it. If you need to if you want to take a walk and knock on some doors and encourage your neighbors to vote, there's ways for you to get involved. Also, there's candidates that are running. And so if you want to support a candidate, whether you're dropping literature, making phone calls, or texting on behalf of candidates, there's a lot of ways for you to get involved through this November election. So I just encourage you to check out those opportunities as well.
Absolutely. Do it. We did have a couple comments come through as we're getting towards the end here. One of them is, I might just retweet that one instead so you could follow on Twitter and find that one. That was a good one. Another one came through the text. It was just all capital letters, and it said Freddie After Dark. So just wanted to know another vote for this one.
You guys are allowed to make it happen.
Just keep upvoting it, folks. We're gonna make this thing. And I do want to share both of your contact information because you all are some of the smartest people in the entire state and maybe in the entire world. And folks should know how to get a hold of you. Yeah, you only get that one time from me, Jess. So this is enjoy it. It is recorded, so you can play it back anytime that you want to. But I'm going to put it up right here. So email is the best way for them to get to you, right?
Yep.
Great. And now it's on the screen so everybody can see it. And now you can go bother them forever, all the time. You can send them all the emails you want, all the questions that you have, and everything else. No way for you to find me anymore, so that would just get them. No, it's great.
Yeah, we're happy to assist you in any way we can, whether it's if you want to know how to get involved, if you want to learn more about getting involved via advocacy or campaigns, or just doing the hard work of being an election volunteer, whether it's working the polls or being an election protection volunteer. Those are all things that we desperately need because it's what makes democracy work.
Yep, absolutely right. Yep. So get a hold of them. They are wonderful and can help you with just about everything that you need. Other than that, I am going to share one more since we got, we're already over, so might as well do it. But right here, and this is something that we can share. I can put over on Twitter too or something, but and that moved out of the way a little bit, but let's see if I can get it back for you. It's a notary, like a list of notary events. Let's see if I can click that in. Can I click it in? It went away. I'll just share it on Twitter. No big deal, whatever. But it is a list of all these different notary events if you are still looking for a notary and you need one in the St. Louis area. So I can go ahead and share that too. A wonderful volunteer put that all together. But it's important if you're looking for a notary, you need one, then you can find one. They're all out there. So register to vote. October 7th is your deadline. Register to vote and get it done. That's all I have to say. So.
And if you are volunteering right now, a lot of the resources that we have been showcasing today are put together by people who are not paid to do this work. It's so important. And we thank you for all the work that you're doing to make sure people are voting and can vote and can find the information they need in advance of Election Day. Sometimes democracy is hard, but the volunteers that make all of this stuff possible are what make it work.
Amen. Great. Jessica Lambrick, Freddie Doss. Welcome to the pod. Shout out again, TechArtista. Thank you for helping put this together and making sure that we're getting the word out to everybody. If you do want to check them out, I'll give them a shout out too. Why not? Let's do it. You can go to TechArtista.org. So go check them out, see all the great things they're doing. If you need, again, that website that we shared a whole lot was votemissouri.org. So go check that one out too. And as always, if you need anything, you can always find copies of this show and a recording of this one and everything else over at aladgross.live. All right, everybody. Thanks for coming.